Hey everybody, how we doing out there? So great to have you here on Monday, the 10th of November, 2025. It is the 250th birthday of the United States Marine Corps, and we have an awesome treat today. A special guest with Ryan Sparks here with us today. And I'm so glad you guys are all here sharing your Monday afternoon. Hopefully you have the day off today and can enjoy that. So let me tell you a little about Ryan because you're really in for just a fantastic interview. Going to get to learn a lot of leadership lessons. It's a great opportunity for us to learn today. So Ryan Sparks, he's a highly decorated Marine Corps combat veteran and transformative executive whose career spans Fortune 100 companies to high growth startups. He's led major transformation at Wells Fargo, Carlyle Companies, the Lennar Corporation, JP Morgan Chase, driving billions in value through strategy, technology, and leadership, and a whole lot else. But before entering the business world, he commanded infantry and reconnaissance units in Iraq and Afghanistan, earning the Silver Star, Bronze Star with Combat V, 2 Purple Hearts, and the Lieutenant Colonel William G. Leftwich Trophy for outstanding leadership. And I will tell you, it's not just outstanding leadership, it's the #1 captain in the entire United States Marine Corps, okay? He's humble, he won't say that, but I'm going to say all these things that I know are true. Extremely hard to get that, like legendary hard to get that award, okay? And today, Ryan advises CEOs, boards, private equity firms on how to lead with clarity, courage, and conviction, building cultures of trust, purpose, and disciplined execution. So Ryan, so great to have you today with us here, and say hello to everybody.
Yeah, hey everybody. Thanks for the intro, Ben. You're right. I certainly wouldn't say that. And you look pretty good for 250. I mean, you've been ageless since I know you, but you look good.
Hey, thank you so much. Yeah, what a great day too. Happy birthday, by the way, brother.
Same to you.
And all the Marines out there, happy birthday. Hopefully you didn't party too hard this weekend and go absolutely nuts, but that's kind of what we end up doing at these things anyway. But especially the 250th birthday ball, I can only imagine it had to be a nut show. So let's just kick right off into this. And, we have a lot of ground to cover. You have a fantastic career. Honestly, you've won so much, have done so much. And we did a special on Friday, our leadership profile on Jensen Huang from NVIDIA. And one of the things he talked about, and I thought it was a perfect setup for today's interview with you, but he talked about, greatness comes from pain and suffering. And I thought, you have gone through so much and done so much and persevered. And I think everybody's going to really get a fantastic opportunity to learn about that today. But starting right off, what led you to the Marines? Okay, first of all, hard decision. But then Force Recon, like me, you were in Force Recon. And in fact, everybody, just so you know about it, he was in Force Recon like shortly after 9/11. I don't know the exact timing of it, but like when it was still the moon and there was no one out there but the Taliban and maybe one or two special forces team, but possibly even before the special forces teams. I'm not sure about the timing of it, but you guys were out there when there's no one out there. That's some crazy stuff. And then to be the Leftwich Award winner on top of all that, commanding in combat, going back over and over again, highly decorated in combat, top rank officer. I know that for a fact in every unit over and over. And the amount of pain and suffering that like Jensen Huang was talking about from NVIDIA, you did this in spades over and over again. But what would you say is the deeper driving force at the root of all that?
What a great way to start. So what led me to the Marines? My grandfather could have been a character in a movie about World War II, Greatest Generations type guy. Good-looking guy, grew up in the Midwest in Kansas City, was a Navy pilot, flew TBMs off the Lexington in the second half of the war, Navy Cross recipient, and was my role model the whole time growing up. And so there was never really a time when serving the country wasn't part of my long-term plan. I mean, it was something it seemed just something that I was supposed to do my whole life. And I didn't really consider it until after college, and I was trying to become a Navy flight officer like my grandfather. For one reason or another, that didn't work out, and in kind of a spur of the moment decision, I walked into a recruiting office and just enlisted in the Marine Corps. And I have these stories that I'm sure are memories, but they don't seem like it anymore. They seem like scenes out of a movie or something. But I remember sitting in the recruiter's office in Lawrence, Kansas, where I graduated from KU as an undergrad. And there was a picture, like that old school recon Marine picture on the wall with the guy with the rappel rope tied around his shoulder.
Right. Recondo days.
Or whatever, one of those old videos. And I told him, 2 years, I'm going to come back and I'm going to come see you after I get promoted to sergeant in force recon. He just laughed me out of the office.
Wow.
And I didn't really know what I was saying, obviously. Like, I hadn't even been to boot camp.
Sure.
But what I found, and to answer your question specifically, is at the end of boot camp, my senior drill instructor said something to us. He's like, if you aren't enjoying this process by now, you probably aren't going to make a career out of this. And it's that secret thing that all of us that achieve these kind of things know deep down.
Yeah.
We like the suffering.
Yeah. Wow.
It's become kind of what I help people to find their path. Like, what is the thing that when you're doing it, everybody else sees it as suffering, and you feel the pain, but you're not suffering. Your mind and your mental state is actually in a place of bliss or in a flow state or one of those places.
Right.
And you see this in top level athletes, you see it in CEOs. This stress just falls off of them. Other people couldn't do that job. And that's what, going through special operations training and leading over and over, going to combat. I mean, Ben, yourself and other Marines, you couldn't imagine not being in combat. Like 100%. That is the worst, is to not be there and not be part of the suffering. So, I think that's really the key. And so when you're going through these things, if you're not enjoying it, if you're not getting deep meaning from, certainly there's kind of the badge of honor with the pain itself, but also you're not in a flow state while you're going through it, you're not like living at a higher plane, then you're probably on the wrong path. And so the success over and over really has been, I think, in a metaphor, using a compass and not a map. Like, I know what my true north is, and I'm going to take whatever winding path it takes to get there. I'm not trying to follow directions, not trying to follow a path.
Yeah.
And that keeps me kind of plugged in a little bit more into that higher calling.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's really interesting, because you're taking the inward journey and you're following directions that are from a vision, from internal feelings, internal guidance system, and not getting ping-ponged around by the events of the world. I mean, we all do a little bit to some, but you get back on track, you find your way back on your azimuth, back on your direction you're going. So yeah, thanks so much for that. That's, I think, very, very valuable for the audience, because again, the whole mission of this podcast, of this channel, is to upgrade people's lives, upgrade our lives. And all of us, even the two of us right now, we get to learn and grow together as well too. And so, it's a real service for other people, and a chance for them to learn what are the keys to success? What's the science of it? What can help them? So that was very, very valuable. I appreciate you sharing that with the audience. And as always, everyone too, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll try to get to them later on, but we have a lot of ground to cover. So, and so that being said, and then there was no letting up. And this internal guidance system, this true north, led you to hard charge right into possibly something even more competitive, if it's possible, but in the business world, even more, especially when the places you were at. And so, the same type of driving force. And then going into that, leadership under pressure and calm and chaos, with this type of talking about these type of things, but leadership under pressure. You've led Marines in combat, you led executives in boardrooms. When the pressure peaks, whether bullets are flying or billions are on the line, as you said, what's the single mental framework you would say you fall back on to make decisions clearly?
Ben, in the Marine Corps, we talk about commander's intent over and over and over. And if you translate that to something that's a little bit more, not so esoteric, that's a little bit more universal, I would say it's focusing on outcomes over activities. And organization after organization that I join and that I'm a part of, they might have a great playbook and they might have a great system, but that's not the prime mover. right? That's not the prime
Right.
principle. And so they don't know why they're successful and why they got where they are. They haven't really distilled down sometimes what the competitive advantage is. And then they lose sight of like, what's the real outcome that we're trying to drive? And so that the discipline comes back to that all the time. Like, do you understand what the problem really is? And do you understand what a solution to that problem could look like? And then if you've really got systems dialed in, what is the North Star metric? What is the measurable thing that we can move?
Right.
And that
Right.
we're going to measure constantly to make sure that we're on the
Okay.
right track. And what that does, whether it was in combat or in boardrooms, as you say, it distills down your focus, and it really allows you to tune into the signal and get rid of the noise. So you can stay focusing about the problem and still have exploratory conversations, but you can come back and they're not all relative. They're focused on a known point.
So really focused on what you're trying to do, like
That's
ultimately,
right.
like what? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
what's the outcome you're really trying to achieve?
Is that almost like a first principles thinking thing, like Elon Musk talks about? Where he's talking about what is the ultimate objective, and then breaking it down into its core components from there.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
I saw an interview with him maybe 9 or 10 months ago at this point, and he had this great kind of approach. And he's like, if you know the answer, what's more fascinating is trying to figure out the question and reverse engineer the question. And he kind of ended in a very Elon Musk way. He's like, so if the universe is the answer, what's the question? Like,
Right.
okay, like that's probably a little bit too big for us to try to solve. But
Right. Right.
I love that thinking, right? Like, what's the first principle? What's the question you're really asking? And there's all kinds of techniques from lean or from agile or Six Sigma and all these to help you define those things down. The simple 5 whys works great. Just keep asking yourself why over and over until you get to
Yeah.
something that you really can't distill any further, and then just stay focused on that. I think, Ben, one of the things you and I have talked about a lot over the years is the discipline around preparation for these things too. And so you're
Yeah.
removing all of the variables you can. And so
Right.
when you're in those moments, you're just focusing on the ones that you can. And
Right. Right.
it prevents so much friction. And that's true no matter where you're at.
Yeah, and that's the old Vince Lombardi. The will to prepare to win is more important than the will to win on game day. And then just like when we were doing direct action, right? Direct action and force recon or MARSOC or wherever, we're reducing the variables. We're squeezing out the variables. And this is also, Army SOF as well, any good direct action unit, but squeezing out the variables and the uncertainty as much as possible. And within this little hole here is the amount of, there's a pinpoint we're trying to hit, but we've reduced the variables from this to this, the uncertainty of that. Now we're going to go. And we're going to prevail through uncertainty. So it's similar, I think so. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems a similar type of focus. So
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Let me ask you this too. Was there ever a moment during your time in the Marines, combat or training, that stayed with you and ultimately influenced the kind of business leader you later on became, or cumulative, whatever you think?
There's 100 little moments.
Yeah.
One that sticks in my mind probably the most, and I really don't know why, but it's a vivid memory. Ben, as you know, for the audience, the land navigation portion of the basic reconnaissance course is the first real test,
Yeah.
and it's grueling, and so many special operations communities use this as the tool. And ours is in the mountains of Camp Pendleton, which is not the easiest place to get through. It's really
a beatdown. It's a beatdown.
Yeah, it's a beatdown. It's really thick weeds and brush, and it's really steep and a lot of temperature variance. And so anyway, it was one of those days, and it was raining. It's 40 degrees out. I was the second day of the land nav course, I don't know, 20 kilometers away. I'm stuck on the side of like a 30-degree slope hill, just sliding up and down. And I just remember screaming out, and like, if there was somebody standing right there, I would have quit at that moment. But there was something in my head that clicked right then. It's that I've also felt surfing a lot on really big days when you're paddling out and you keep getting stuck and the waves are pushing you back. And it's the only way out of it is through. So the only way to quit is to get through it and get back to the station and quit.
Right.
The only way to get out of it
is to succeed in order to quit. To succeed
in order to quit. And so there's 100 moments like that. There's every gunfight I was in was that way. Like, everything is that way. Like, everything comes up with that way. And so what happens is the mindset becomes, all I have to do is get to the next place, and then I can make a decision. Get to the next waypoint, get to the next event, just finish this event, and then I can get through it. And if you can set up that kind of discipline in your mind, that you can quit whenever you want, but it's not going to be today. I'll quit tomorrow. Right. Like, just constantly be telling yourself, like, I'm just going to make it through today. I can quit tomorrow. What happens is you realize that, back to the point about the suffering, like, you enjoy the achievement at the end of the day, and it sets you up for longer term satisfaction instead of kind of the short term goals. And so whether it's an organization, like, look, let's just get through this and then we can change our direction tomorrow, it adds discipline and follow through into the specific process. And you've played high level sports. I think it applies everywhere. I mean, let's get through the quarter, let's get through the half, let's get through the game, let's get through the day, let's get through the practice. I mean, all of those sorts of things. And then you surround yourself with great people that you can support each other in the moment. And I mean, it really just becomes a pretty phenomenal experience.
Yeah, I find that I've had those moments quite a few times. It's interesting because I've even heard it said, and I've used this myself, to where I would advise someone saying, it's not bad to quit if you know something's not for you, but don't quit until you get good at it. It's the same philosophy. Win first, and then you can make the decision.
Right.
And the thing is that as you get better at something, once you start getting better, it will start getting easier, and you may change your perspective where you see, I'm actually good at this. You have more self-trust, more self-confidence. Yeah, so I think that's great. And so hopefully everyone out there, you're getting a lot out of this, because this is the real deal. He's the real deal. And I'm telling you, these things work, and it's very, very important. So take some notes, put this away. Obviously, you can watch this again on the replay later. I'll put chapters so you can find these sections. But yeah, that's fantastic, Ryan. And so for your leadership, and then for your leadership with that philosophy and those moments compiled together, how would you say that shaped your leadership? How would that have shaped your leadership and your view towards responsibility?
I had a platoon sergeant once, a guy named Chris Wade, legend. Retired as, I think, the senior gunner in the Marine Corps. We don't have enough time to explain what a gunner is, but it's
badass, basically.
Yeah, a Chief Warrant Officer 5 gunner in the Marine Corps is like literally spotting a purple unicorn.
Right. And just for everybody in the audience too, really fast, that's a great point you're saying to explain who he is. Yeah. But highly experienced, trusted, enlisted, staff non-commissioned officer that then becomes a in between senior enlisted and a commissioned officer is a warrant officer. So he's an advisor to usually high-level commanders on weapons employment, things like that. So, but they're a rare breed, very rare breed. And this guy looked the part too. Wade looked the part. Yeah,
he is a great guy, and he'd get in. Every morning he would get up and put on his uniform and look in the mirror and just ask himself if he was worthy to stand in front of the Marines every day. And
wow, man, there's some legends, dude. Wow.
And that was kind of my point around leadership and the lessons that we've already talked about. Like, am I prepared? Like, what does that mean to be worthy to stand in front of these people? Like, am I prepared? Do I have all of my things in order? Have I done enough work? Have I done study? Like, these people's lives are in my hands. That's kind of number one, and to always understand, like, especially as a Marine leader, but any organization this applies, like, you're a custodian of this organization and you really have a lot of influence in people's lives. I mean, it's always life and death. I mean, in the corporate world, and these people are reliant on you for health insurance and for longevity and supporting their families. Like, it's still just like the gravity's still very strong. The second thing that I always just kind of see what a leader is supposed to do is, especially at a team, small group, your leadership team in a business, like be in the environment, be in the trenches with them, like share the suffering, share the understanding, like
Right.
take that, you know, take that Gemba approach, go and see, like go get and be with them where they're experiencing whatever the problem is. And then, you know, lead by example and lead by the front, like
And this is
help
the
them
same.
through the friction, help them through the pain, right? Like help them stay on the azimuth with the compass, like stay focused on the outcomes. But you have to do it with them. You can't do it.
That's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's a similar philosophy to what we had, been taught as lieutenants, to go to the point of friction, to see,
Yeah.
as an infantry commander, as a platoon commander, to go to the point of friction, which unfortunately is also why, the casualty rate for Marine lieutenants in the infantry is pretty high, as I understand it. So, but it's that Alexander the Great type of leadership where you're going to the point of friction, the most dangerous place to understand the problem. And obviously, if you survive all that and you rise to the ranks at different levels, all the way to business leadership. So you're saying that doesn't change. You need to be with them, share the pain. Okay.
And then you start putting these things together. So you do the preparation, you've done the upfront work, you understand what the outcome is you're trying to drive, which allows you to find the point of friction. And then in the business world, that's actually really tough because it's not so visceral. So really understand, I mean, for the entrepreneurs out there that are trying to find a product market fit, like it's really hard to understand what the point of friction is. And so doing the preparation, understand the customer journey, being right there, talking to the customers, talking to your salespeople, go on sales calls, like be in the details of the app, watch the telemetry of people using your technology. Like you've got to be there to find the point of friction and then just stay super focused on that. And to your point, like that's where the casualties happen. Certainly like helping
in business as well too.
Yeah, that's because you're not going to succeed all the time. And I think that's one of the hard things to accept as a leader, and I tell my teams often, if you bat 400, you're going to the Hall of Fame. Like having that mindset, but you've got to have thousands of at bats.
Right. This is fantastic because we do have a fair amount of entrepreneurs and, business leaders that watch this as well too. So they're going to get a lot out of that. The crossover, and again, the point for today too is to see, these principles of success in leadership, whether you're leading in combat, on the battlefield, in the boardroom, in business, whatever it is, and you're doing that masterfully. It's a great study. But yeah, like you said, the friction point is harder to define in business. Like we can see the friction point in the military, and it's visceral and it's dangerous, highly catastrophic. But in business, it's more elusive. It's like, it reminds me of, and what's in Star Wars, the Emperor, the Sith. You can't find them. You really can't find them. They're out there. They're doing things. But what is it? What's poisoning our business right now? Right. So you really have to deep dive in and get in there and spend the time and talk with people. And like you said, studying the technology, everything. So,
well, and I think the other thing too, Ben, you got to get rid of the sacred cows and you can't put things off limits.
Right. Yeah.
And I generally make my whatever team I'm leading, whatever organization I'm leading, read Stan McChrystal, his book, Team of Teams.
Okay.
And really that's like one of the number one takeaways. Like you can't just, and how I get to this outcomes over activities, you can't show up and just go through the reps and because you're doing your thing well, but if the apparatus is broken, like how do you fix this? How do you really change the structure in the environment?
Right. And with that too, you've led transformations in some of the world's largest organizations too. So where discipline and innovation will clash, and people who are RTC, no pun intended. Ryan and I worked at a unit called RTC, the Reconnaissance Training Company. So RTC, resistant to change in business, but they are RTC a lot of the times. How do you build systems that encourage creativity without descending into chaos? Kind of what you're saying, the sacred cows. But how do you build these systems that encourage that innovation without, while still maintaining discipline?
Such a great question. And really what I find is the heart of it all, Ben, is like to do a couple things really well. One is add discipline to the routines that you run the business by. And so one of the easiest transitions for me was going from leading infantry and special ops types units to technology teams that are really, have an agile approach. And it's every day we have a stand-up, we're talking about what we're going to do, we're talking about what we learned, we talk about what we're doing next. Every 2 weeks we come back and we look at, what's the long-term plan? Like, are we on plan? What are we going to do? What's the next most valuable thing to do? And just stay disciplined to that routine, but agnostic to the activities in between. You're going to do whatever is the next most valuable thing. And if that's different than what you thought it was yesterday because of the data, you change. And so I describe it very deliberately and specifically as helping organizations through evolutionary bottlenecks. So an evolutionary bottleneck, and I describe it to them like, okay, so either you want to adapt and do something else, or the market environment has changed and you have to adapt in order to survive in that. And the way that evolution works is you don't really know in the moment whether or not you're surviving. Like, continuing to exist is winning. And so whatever you have to do to adapt, to keep moving forward, you can add some sort of direction to it, but it's going to be through 1,000 mutations and 1,000 experiments that you either work and keep it or you get rid of it immediately. And if you start to hold on to any of those things, then you're going to go down the wrong path. And so that discipline around the execution, around the routines, and around constant focus on back to the outcomes. Like, what is our North Star metric? What are the ones that support that? Are we measuring it every day? Are we getting the feedback? What do the feedback loops look like? So that's how you really lead these organizations. And it's not sexy, and it can be a grind, and because you don't feel the success in the moment. It's going to be back to what we were talking about before. It's a really delayed outcome to maybe decades of this work. You talked about Jensen and NVIDIA. The gamers out there like know NVIDIA. It's been around for a long time. Like, forever. That's where you got your graphic chips for your computer that you would build so it can run faster. Right. It wasn't until people started using those really for crypto and other things and before AI that this company exploded.
Right. And he was being laughed at. He was being laughed at for 10 or 12 years because they're like, what are you wasting your money in this CUDA, this software for? And so and how do you square that for everyone in the audience, taking this down to a tactical level? How do you say, okay, I know I need to do this, make this change, and I know the payoff might be 10 years away, 15 years away. So do you have small metrics, or do you have, you're falling in love with the process? Is it small wins that keep you going? What keeps you going for that eventual success?
That's probably the hardest thing, and generally where organizations fall down. And that is, generally it's the CEO, the founder, whoever. For the founders out there, this to be true. You have to have a very clear vision on where you're going. And that's why I talk about having a compass and like knowing what north is. You have no idea what the path is going to look like. And what that north is has to be something you're trying to contribute to the market, to your customers, to the world. It can't be a specific solution. And so you just have to stay focused on that. And it's hard, especially in public companies.
Yeah,
especially in public companies where you've got results you've got to deliver. There's a couple leaders that do it really well. I think Jamie Dimon is one of the best, if not the best in the business. That he sees the vision, he can deliver short-term wins. He communicates to his shareholders, to the market, what's going on. If you look at their technology investments over the last decade, they've paid out, and you can look at their earnings, they just run away. Wells Fargo's on a similar path now that they've made it through kind of their trials and tribulations, and Charlie and his leadership team are doing a phenomenal job, kind of doing the same thing, projecting where they're going, and they just stay radically focused on what are the few things that are going to make the biggest outcome and are going to get this company where we want it to go.
It is, and I've got to imagine, sorry to interrupt, but I've got to imagine it's such a stressful thing to drive the results that the shareholders want to see and the board has to see, everybody has to see publicly, for the bottom line. But at the same time, trying to inspire, lead, teach, motivate, inspire the people that you've hired that are A-team players, these are A-list players, to make sure they continue to play at the A level. Is that something, does that require inspiration, or is it just, almost like, it's like a, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick thing, like, hey, come on, you got to give it all you got, and if you don't, we got to replace you and go. More of that. I don't know which one works best.
I would say it's an equal balance of both. And
okay.
And it goes back to that point that like, if you're in the right place, you enjoy the suffering, you enjoy the discipline, you enjoy being held to a higher standard, and
Yeah.
achieving the goal is the inspiration itself. And so I had this great opportunity to work for a CEO named Chris Koch, very closely, day to day. Like he and I, my office was next to his. Chris is a fantastic CEO, and and for anybody, I recommend going out to Carlisle companies and go look at their website, and he has his Vision 2030, and you can see very clearly him describe, this is where we're going.
I'll check it out for sure.
And then he runs the company like that with just maniacal focus. Okay. He has all kinds of exploratory conversations, but when it comes down to it at the end of the day, you can see the 5 metrics in Vision 2030. This is what we're doing here. What are you doing that contributes to this? I had a conversation with him once where, it's kind of early days of all the generative AI stuff that's exploding. And I had a relationship with some folks at Carnegie Mellon, and I was going out there to talk to startups and whatever. And he sat me down. He's like, explain to me how that's going to contribute to shareholder value in the next couple of years, what you're doing. And
knowing you had a good answer.
30 seconds, and I'm like, he's like, then what are you doing it for? Like, that's not what we do here.
Right. Right.
And he wouldn't, and he, it's not that he doesn't care. Like the number of the investment, it doesn't matter that, like, he didn't care about the few $1,000s for the travel. He just, what he saw was, focus in a different direction, and just constantly he brings the organization back.
It's the constant stacking of small efforts.
Right. Yeah. And he's been the CEO for a little over 10 years now, and you go back and look at the stock price from when he took over in 2015 to where it's today.
This is Carlisle, right? Carlisle Group, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Great company.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that too. That's excellent. Yeah. Great. And I know everyone's going to benefit from that. Fantastic. And so let me ask you this. So in your experience with this, does innovation come from structure or from breaking it? I'm kind of bringing it back to the innovation that we talked a little bit about with No Sacred Cows. And again, that being said, let me just make sure I qualify it for everybody watching and listening out in the audience that we're not doing it innovation for innovation's sake, as Ryan was just talking about, but having that maniacal focus on the 5-year vision, the ultimate vision, and making sure all oars are pulling in the same direction. You're all going in the same direction to contribute towards that mission. But with this being said, that innovation that'll contribute to that vision, do you think it comes from structure or from breaking it?
Both.
I know, and okay,
yeah.
Okay.
It's a great question because it comes from
as the words leave my mouth, I have all kinds of ideas that come up.
Yeah, no, it comes from both, and well, people confuse innovation and invention a lot, and you see a lot of it going on with the AI race that's happening right now, and everybody's really frantic to use AI. I would say anytime that you grab a solution and you're looking for a problem, you're going the wrong direction. And you see that a lot, and people will describe it as innovation as opposed to what's the problem I'm trying to solve, what's the outcome I'm trying to achieve.
Right.
Now there's a new set of tools. And so James Cameron, and when he first made Avatar, there's a great story around this because he had a vision for the movie forever, decades, but the technology wasn't ready to achieve his vision. And so as soon as it got there, he was able to make the movie. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunities like that with AI right now, but that's how you know that whether you're breaking the wrong thing. That being said, when you run into these places where people start talking about that's just the way it is, or that's just how we do business here, or they start grabbing culture or squishy things and holding on to them, it's not to say that they're wrong, but that's where you have to push, and that's where you have to pressure test, and that's where I've come up with this phrase of activities over outcomes. And so you'll see companies have a lot of activities, and Harvard Business Review is littered with these kind of cases where it was right in front of them. There's a great case with Nokia versus Apple when the iPhone came out. There's a cover of I think it's Fortune magazine, Nokia on the cover. It's like 2006 timeframe. I think it's November 2006. It says, "Can anybody catch the cell phone giant?" That cover was printed about 9 months after the iPhone was released.
Wow.
like, how can you not see it staring in your face? And so in retrospect, we look at it today, we're like, it's obvious. It's not obvious when you're in the moment. And so how do you constantly just push, like, is this still relevant? These activities good? I mean, any of us could do this tomorrow. Show up tomorrow, look at your calendar, and ask which one of the meetings you don't know what the point of it is. Or if that program has already, like, if it's a program or a project, like, have we defined what the end of this thing is? And if not, like, go do that tomorrow, get rid of it, like, clean out that space and start looking for the new outcomes that you're trying to drive and get rid of those activities.
You know, it's interesting for me. I've found that as you're saying that, I've had to look at my schedule, even for speaking engagements. You know, if I'm invited to do something and I have to really look at, how is this serving my mission? Is it the right timing? Are there bigger priorities? And I found that it serves me very well, especially for inner peace as well, too, for one thing. Absolutely. And then streamlining, keeping the main thing, even though the main thing can be very mundane, it's very hard, it's grueling, but there is that satisfaction from doing the hard, grueling things, you know, day on, stay on every day. But I find that applying that to a personal level has been very useful. But then you're saying at the strategic level in big organizations, do the same thing, ruthlessly prioritize. I remember one of our recon instructors talking about that. That may have been a Jeremy Graysick thing too. He may have been saying, I mean, it's a leadership thing, but, you know,
that's right.
God bless him. I think that's, I can remember, I think he would say that. But yeah, and then quick aside from the main thing. So you're saying culture versus strategy. You're saying culture can be squishy. When is culture, you know, as some people have said, culture eats strategy, but when is this not true? Like when culture maybe it's a weak culture? Is that when that's true? Like you were saying, you have to actually attack that culture if it's a bad, how does that work?
Interestingly enough, like people try to make these separate things. And I really don't think that they are. They're definitely two sides of the same coin, but you need to build the culture for the strategy of the organization that you're trying to drive.
Right.
Agile experimentation doesn't work in a manufacturing plant, but there is a way to do it. I mean, and Toyota's perfected this, where the people running the line, if they have an innovation, you know, they have the kind of the legendary operating system where they can stop and they can improve and they can innovate, but you're not constantly trying to reinvent things. The culture. So let me define that a little bit better. What I mean. So whatever your strategy is, goes back to, like, what is that outcome that we're trying to drive? Like, what is the problem in the market that we're trying to solve? Why does this organization exist? And, like, how are we actually going to do that? Next to that is the culture. And so, you know, I think, like, Simon Sinek does a great job of describing this. So your culture is really based on whatever that mission is that you're trying to. And so your culture is who we are. And your strategy is, like, what you're trying to accomplish. And so those two things can't be incongruent. And so if you don't have a great culture, you might be able to get something done in the short term. You're not going to build a long-term organization. Right. If you don't have a great strategy, you could have, I run into a lot of nonprofits like this. They don't have a great strategy to stay solvent. Right. They've got a lot of people that are really passionate about the mission, and they're very supportive of each other. And, like, you know, there's a couple of donors on the board that believe in it, and so they do great things. But they're not really driving a strategy of the organization. And so I think they're really two sides of the same coin. What's interesting, though, is people, if you go across LinkedIn, there's a lot of people that are trying to define what a great culture is. A great culture is whatever the organization needs to be to
Right. I mean, would you say the Marine Corps' culture is? I always use it as an example. To me, it just seems like they have it right. Like, you know, it's a warrior culture, warrior ethos. They stay true to it. Would you agree with that? Saying that, you know, for the mission.
Right. Yeah, I think Marine Corps culture is a great example, and it is exactly what needs to exist to accomplish the mission of the Marine Corps. Right. Marine Corps culture wouldn't exist at a great design firm. Like that would be, you know what I mean? Like they're going to get a bunch of people drawing the same picture over and over and over. And over.
They're going to die if you don't get this done. What the hell's wrong with you? You know?
Like Marine Corps tattoos don't have a lot of variation in them. There's like 10.
Right.
So it's not the right culture for that organization or what the strategy of that is. Or even for, Army logistics. Like, you don't need people adapting and overcoming and all that stuff all the time. It's like, no, fill out the paperwork, like get the stuff
Right.
like,
Have you ever seen, let me ask on a funny note, have you ever seen a totally misplaced culture, like mismatched to what this strategy is?
oh yeah. In fact,
Oh
I've been
no.
culprit of building these a bunch of times because
Oh
I show
God.
up and I think like this lesson, this is the scars that I have that I'm talking
Okay.
about. I
Yeah.
would show up and build an organization, especially when I was transitioning from building technologies to running IT organizations and being the
Okay.
CIO. You want to bring a level of innovation and that sort of thing to the organization, but you're also the
Right.
backbone of the operating system of whatever that organization is.
Right.
Like,
Right.
this just has to work first, right?
Right.
Like
Exactly.
there's no experimentation with your ERP. Like the thing's got to
Right.
work. And so, like I've built cultures that are like, we're talking about innovation and adapt and overcome and all this stuff that we're talking about. It's like, no. Like we need a better ticket system, disciplined,
Yeah,
like
that's right.
show up. This is more of an operational focused culture. So I think, again, knowing the strategy and seeing the culture that fits. I mean, there's other places, you see places where the culture has existed for a long time and the strategy has changed and then the culture didn't keep up with it. And I think a
Okay.
lot of big Fortune 100s fall into this place.
You see
And
that. Yeah.
yeah, you see it, especially what's going on right now. You've got people that grew up, running a business in its very specific way. I use the term analog a lot. There's a lot of people that, our generation and older that this isn't like what's going on right now isn't how they ran businesses. And they're
Right.
used to,
Okay.
a much more, again, analog way of thinking where it's input, process, output, linear process design. You're trying to think through business process maps and all of the different variations and branch plans as opposed to, what you can do today with data and technology where it's not linear. You can think in terms of like systems and networks and kind of graph
Right.
databases, things that are just much more powerful. It takes a different
It's
culture.
funny.
It takes a different culture.
I can remember my father telling me he was a mechanical engineer, and they first started putting computers in the office, and they started telling them to check emails. He and the other engineers, if you can imagine this, my dad ripped the computer out of the wall, like they threw it out. They're like, "We're not doing any of this." Can you imagine?
Right.
And my dad was a bit of a caveman in the first place, but he was a very smart guy, mechanical engineer. But they were like, "We're not checking emails. You can come in and tell us,"
Right.
and hilarious. So I think this was like, ITT Standard or somewhere like that, one of these companies.
100%.
Yeah.
Well,
And
and
they're, they'd have to come down hat in hand to talk to the engineers who are building their technology, building their things. And they just thought they were, these were the superstars, right? Like
Right.
we build the things you use and you sell, blah. So
Yeah, I mean, you see it going on in businesses everywhere right now that they don't really understand how to use AI tools and what's going on, and so they're waiting or
yeah,
think it doesn't apply. It's going to be one of those massive paradigm shifts, and I've
yeah,
been telling my teams for months, years now, frankly, like people using AI are going to be replacing people that don't. It's not just going to be
right,
AI replaces humans.
right,
And so
right.
that's what the productivity curve is going to look like. So be at the front of it and think about how your culture's got to change and your systems have to change to keep up with that.
On the channel, we talk about probably weekly. It's probably been 2 weeks since I've really done a deep dive in AI, but we talk about AI, emerging technology, disruptive technology, fairly frequently. I just say we just covered NVIDIA on Friday, so I stand corrected. But what advice would you have to the audience about like agentic AI, using it as a thought partner? How can they leverage that now, even to get ahead, maybe to start a side hustle to make some more money? Like the
Sure.
small wins. What would you say to them?
God, I don't know that there's a boundary to that question. I think that
Okay.
it's just start.
Okay.
Like, I would say that aside from maybe, 5 or 10,000 people that are out there that are the true experts, it's still a pretty small population. All of us are still in relatively the same place. It's so fast.
Right.
So, but nobody's cracked the code. And so we're at the early days on the frontier and the early innings. And so just get out there and start trying and start thinking about how to use it. And I would say, just keep in mind that it's probabilistic, not necessarily deterministic. So don't try to use it the same way that you would build a normal computer system. Think about it as kind of an infinite pool of PhDs, the people that have PhDs in every subject, but
Yeah.
Don't speak your native language. Like, be very
Got it.
deliberate, give them very specific instructions, see what they come back with. And yeah, I don't think that there's any boundaries that you can go. I just start and start.
Just
You
start.
put a
Okay.
bunch of the tools on your phone, force yourself to use them every day. Have
And you're
reiterative conversations, learn how to prompt engineer. I would say there's a couple great free courses out there that
okay.
you can find around prompt engineering. It's probably the basic skill you need first, but yeah, just lean in.
And you know what's crazy is I've seen in places like Upwork, maybe in a few other like contract work apps, things like that, where you can get hired to do jobs. I've seen them looking for prompt engineers.
Yeah,
And there's no, and everyone in the audience too, so you know this, we're looking for a side hustle, looking to make some more money on the side. And I know some of you are too, but it doesn't say anything about a degree or about experience. It's just, can you prompt engineer? Can you use Sora? And they'll give you the access they have to Sora. Can you do video design through AI? Well, you can. Just start practicing now and show up, raise your hand, put your name in the hat. You might find yourself making $30 an hour. Over the weekend, that's not bad, right? You can supplement your
right.
things are hard, right? We've talked about this. The groceries are up, economy's hard, all these things like that, tariffs, all this stuff like that. So, we got to focus on what we can control, and that's one thing for sure. So, yeah, I appreciate you talking about that. I'll probably ask you what you.
On that vein too. I think for all of the veterans that are on your channel and folks that are just getting out, like, being able to describe task, condition, standard, like you know how to do prompt engineering better than most people. You just haven't realized that yet. Like, going in and giving somebody a role, telling them what the task is, what the conditions are, what you want the output to look like, and then iterating through that over and over. Like, that's really the core of prompt engineering. And so
That's human prompt enginering. That's right
absolutely.
there.
And
That's a
goes back to
fantastic
my
point.
Just think about it that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. So in the Marines, let me ask you this. Structure can literally save lives in the Marines. And you came from that world, so did I. And then how did you see structure? How did you translate structure into innovation in business? We talked a little bit about this, but I want to hit this one specifically.
Right.
How you can take, so like the Marine Corps planning process, the discipline. Yesterday I talked a lot about the Marine Corps leadership principles. Know your team and employ them in accordance with their capability, all those things like that, and leadership traits. Yesterday was kind of my Marine Corps Leadership Day to celebrate the 250th birthday. But how can you take that structure and then apply it into business with, where you also have to innovate? Or did you ever see that as stifling? I know we covered a little bit of this ground, but I just want to specifically hit this.
Yeah, I mean, if the audience didn't look at those yesterday, I'm sure you did a fantastic job, Ben. I'll go back and watch it too.
Oh, thank you.
Just use those principles.
Right.
Here's a great way to learn prompt engineering we're just talking about. Grab the Marine Corps leadership principles and leadership traits, put them into ChatGPT, tell them to translate this into business, and see what comes out, and then go do that.
It's a great idea.
Really,
I'm actually going to do that right after we finish.
Yeah, it's really just the same thing. Like, knowing your team, knowing what they're good at, knowing what the gaps are, like really understanding what the capabilities of your team. This happens at banks all the time. They want to build new technologies. Like, do you really have the team to build new software and technologies? They're great at implementing technologies. They understand the market, but are they really good at software engineering? Does the environment allow you, like understanding the environment, understanding in the, back to the planning process. Have you really broken the market down? Do you really understand where you exist in the market? I think that the single best framework, and I was so I don't know why I was proud of this. I didn't invent this, but I was so excited to see it a couple years ago. Jamie Dimon talked about the OODA loop in his shareholder letter in terms of how to lead through innovation. And I think that that's really it. Just observe what's going on, but with a deep understanding of where you are in space, in the market, from a capital perspective. And then orient yourself like, okay, I'm not just in the center of this grid. I'm not in the center of the picture. I'm in a specific place. And with that orientation, like understanding what your capabilities are, what your teams are, et cetera.
Right.
Decide what to do, go do it, and then use the feedback loop and come back and do it again.
Right.
And just whatever structure you want to add around that loop and whatever speed, but like, that's really it. And then look, I made a lot of money in business just taking, the the BAMCIS acronym,
Yes, right.
taking that.
General Smith used to say, S doesn't make it plural. He'd
That's
always say
right.
that.
That's right.
I loved it.
Taking,
Let's really fast for the audience. I'm sorry, but tell them what OODA loop is and a snapshot. I know you just covered it. You described how to use it. Tell them OODA loop and tell them BAMCIS as well too.
Yeah. So OODA loop is just a quick history lesson. 1950s, Colonel Boyd, Air Force fighter pilot, came up with this idea of the OODA loop and became, kind of the foundation of Marine Corps doctrine and our philosophy in maneuver warfare. But it's really the idea that if you can make decisions in that loop that I just described faster than your competition, you're going to win every time. Can you observe where you are? Can you orient yourself in that space, decide, act, and then take the output back to the beginning? The faster that you can make that loop. If you can make that loop faster than your competition, back to think about NVIDIA and what they're doing. Jensen's OODA loop is super fast. And go look at how he leads his company. He doesn't have one-on-one.
60 direct reports. 60 direct reports. Yeah.
He allows him to operate autonomously based on principles. I know people that have worked there. Very high levels in the organization. That's really how it runs. But that's what that OODA loop is. And so you think about flying a plane, and how that would become true. Think about an F1 driver and how that would become true. Think about Tom Brady on the football field. Think about any special operator on the battlefield. Think about a salesperson out in the market. They can observe what's going on in the market. They can change their pitch. They can make sales faster, and they can do that faster with more of their clients. They're going to win. So that's really core to some of these strategies. And then BAMCIS is the most basic way to describe Marine Corps planning at the kind of the squad level. You begin planning, and then you figure out where the gaps in your information that you don't know, that you need questions. You make some assumptions, but then you arrange reconnaissance. You go out and figure out how you're going to get answers to those questions. Then you make the reconnaissance, you go do that and come back with the new information, and then you complete your plan. Okay, so you made a beginning plan. What information do I not have? Go out and do that, come back, complete your plan, implement it, and then supervise. Doesn't make it plural, right?
Then doesn't make it plural.
Back to what I was saying, you get in the trenches, you get next to your people, you supervise through it. Now put that and that OODA loop next to each other.
You're set.
You're supervising, and then you're getting new information, you're updating your reconnaissance, you're updating your plan over and over. That is agile software development. You take that to a 5-year level, and you add 100 more steps, and that is how you update strategies in a business. And you can make it more complex, but it always comes down to those two basic patterns.
It's interesting, and looking at the history of where it all came from. But I know that's really useful, you covering that and then going into detail to describe exactly what it is, because we have some people that are some budding entrepreneurs in the audience that are regularly show up, and business students, leaders and career people, all those things like that. So I know that'll be useful. And on the replay, a lot of people who watch later. So and then as always, everybody, if you're watching, put comments and questions in the chat. But then also after the video is posted, comments inside the in the comment section, and I can reach back to Ryan, and maybe he'll hop on there and find a way to answer your questions as well too, even beyond if you're watching the replay later on. And as I'm on that topic, don't forget to subscribe, share, comment, all those things. Yes, it is a YouTube. I don't know if it's a trope or it's a cliche, but we got to do it. So it helps the channel out, and we want to spread the word and get as many people as possible to be able to see this interview and hear these valuable lessons from Ryan. We're lucky to have him here today. So, all right. So another question here, and we talked a little bit about leading sideways. How do you lead when you don't have direct authority? You've commanded troops, you've commanded Marines in combat where you have that direct authority. But interestingly enough, people don't realize how much influence you actually have to have as a Marine officer. You can't just be like, do that and do it now. You can, and they're going to do it, but you better damn well know what you're doing and have a good reason to say it that way and do it that way. People don't realize how much influence is really involved in Marine leadership. You have to build credibility. You have to make them want to follow you, all those things like that. But you've influenced CEOs. You've led troops in combat in urgent, crisis situations. And these are all two very different types of leadership. You're going to tell me in a minute. But how do you lead when you can't rely on rank or title? What do you do then? Especially, in the situations where you have a position in a company or in the military and you're told to go and make the change. How do you lead without the direct coercive authority?
So especially later in my career in the Marines, I used to tell my junior officers all the time that if you need your rank, you don't rate it.
That's a great point. Yeah.
And not that it's not helpful. Like certainly walking into a room, I mean, there's nothing easier in the military than walking into a room with your rank on. Like it immediately establishes like who gets to make decisions and who doesn't. That being said, I'm sure that you experienced this many times, Ben, and all the different incredible advisory roles and attaché roles and stuff that you had. That rank only holds weight until the second you open your mouth.
That's it.
And it really what it comes down to is, are you prepared? Do you have the right information? We've kind of covered it already. Like, are you talking about the outputs? Are you talking about the real problems? Are you removing your own ego from what it is that you're trying to accomplish? And what you'll find, I think, is especially with your peers, if you show up with a true spirit that I want to partner and we're here to make the organization better. And I'm not really concerned about who's going to get credit from this. And let's talk through the problem and share your resources, share your insights, like help them become better. Show up just with kind of a servant's heart to make them better at their role or to make their outcomes work. A couple things will happen. One, first you have to listen to what it is they're actually trying to accomplish and not just show up on broadcast. So that you can really understand from their perspective. And that might be one of those feedback points that goes back into your OODA loop, that you change your perspective on what we're trying to get done. And then the second thing is just show up with resources and show up being willing to help, getting in the trenches with them, the same kind of leadership. Like, I'm going to be here, I'm going to understand the friction points for you, I'm going to work through it with you together, and we're going to stay on point to the same place. When you're doing that, go ahead.
But so they feel as though, so I love that point right there. And I love it for everybody in the audience too. Again, so how do you influence people without, having that coercive authority or having to, throw your weight around? But what Ryan's saying is that show them that you're really for the mission, really for the team. And then I love the point you made. Show them that you're really going to show up for them and benefit them, because people think you're full of crap a lot of times. They think you're trying to be a showboat, like we say, Spotlight Ranger. I know I have my Army guys out there in the audience as well too. But, Spotlight Ranger, you're trying to just show like, oh, I'm just doing it in front of the boss to show I'm showing up for this volunteer service. But no, when you actually mean it and you start doing some work for them, you've made an ally, I believe.
Right.
So
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. So I think that's really critical. And then when you're doing this on behalf of, in my transformation roles, I'm often the emissary for the CEO. The freight train to failure is to show up and start acting like you have the CEO's authority to wield, and like you're just going to all of us have been there where, I run into it a lot, interestingly enough, with CEOs, executive admins, that they kind of show up and they think they've got that title, and they lose sight of like what their role is in the organization.
Right.
So as a transformation leader, if you show up with that and you're trying to influence folks without that, and you're using their positional authority, it's not going to work. What you have to do is come back. So I'll use the Carlisle example in my role there. Chris did such a great job of describing Vision 2030. What I showed up is, hey, I'm here to help you achieve your part of Chris's vision. Let me help you understand the details of what he's describing. And then I'm going to help you put together a plan that achieves that goal. Because ultimately, as the president of one of the businesses, or as the technology leaders or whomever, you're responsible for delivering on these parts of the mission. I'm here to help you make sure that they're integrated, that they're aligned with the vision, that we've got the right metrics, that we're thinking about those the right way, you understand the market, and also help me bring this stuff back to the executive leadership team, your insights, where you see the problems are, how you're thinking about solving those problems. Man, that goes a long way if you just if you act as that conduit. And I think the other thing, Ben, we learned this in the basic school. Like, it's interesting that the Marine Corps teaches you how to lead by making you lead your peers first.
Right.
And so
it's hard. That's the hardest thing to do.
It's the hardest. And you kind of have a little bit of positional authority for that period of time.
And can you tell them really quickly what the basic school is as well too?
So as a Marine officer, there's a bunch of different ways to become, get the rank pinned on, whether you go to the Naval Academy, or you go to officer candidate school, or you go through an ROTC program. Like those are pretty the big three, but there's a couple other ways. You show up as a newly minted second lieutenant butter bar. From that, you have no idea what you're doing. You're not capable of doing anything at that point.
Right.
You made it through the longest job interview in the world. And then you go to this TBS, the basic school, 6-month kind of intense leadership academy that teaches you all the basics about Marine Corps leadership, culture, doctrine, how we make decisions, how we think in places where the information is lacking. You learn some basic skills, technical skills, around weapons and map reading and other those sorts of things. But as the leadership portion of that, you rotate through the different jobs in an infantry battalion, so to speak. So about 1,000 people, like all the different jobs, and you rotate through those, and then you get peer evaluations on how you're doing from those peers, and then you learn from those experiences. I've been through a few of these. I have never seen a leadership academy that is that powerful.
Yeah, right.
And so in that environment, and learning how to lead your peers, what you really find out is that people follow character. And you can be a strong personality, you can lead with a sense of authority, but what they're really following is this person, what's the do-say ratio here? Like, are they doing what they said they were going to do?
Right. Yeah.
Hypocrisy kills a leader faster than anything else. Are you leading by example?
Wow.
Are you showing people how to show up?
Hypocrisy kills a leader more than anything else. The do-say ratio. I'm saying that again so everybody in the audience can register that. Those are some powerful quotes right there. Very powerful.
And you can see it show up, and it happens fast.
Yeah.
And so once people see that you're really there, and then you add these other things we've talked about, you listen, you take feedback, but then when you make a decision, you follow through with that decision, you implement it with authority, you communicate and keep people aligned, you follow, the right communication protocols, you're showing up for those routines. I mean, that's really how you lead anybody, but like with your peers, where you're trying to lead through influence. You can see that. Ben, like your channel here, like,
yeah,
consistently showing up, giving feedback from your audience, answering their questions, bringing on great guests. I mean, could have a huge impact across your client base and the influence other folks. So I mean, I think that it's really just.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. It's funny, but telling, but in spot on about that. But it makes me think of when I was a football coach too, varsity football coach in high school, and then my son was playing high school football, and we would discuss, and even players that I knew, they would talk to me about, how do I lead this team? How do I become more of a leader when they're not the captain? And I said, you have to behave your way into the captain. That's what has to happen. You have to behave like a captain before they're ever going to choose you as captain. And it's got to start now, your freshman year, your sophomore year. And the thing is this, I said, you all know, and I've talked to the team afterwards after the head coach leaves, I was a linebacker coach. I said, you all know when someone who's supposed to be a leader is screwing around all practice. And when the coach is around, they're like, everyone shut up, and do what you're told. But they're screwing around behind the scenes. I said, they're not going to follow you. They're not going to follow you when the heat of battle's on. They need to know you're true, 100% through all the time. And it takes sacrifice. There's no success without sacrifice. Sacrificing, your own feelings, your own desires, your desire to be a goofball, all these things like that. I think my brother's a bit of a philosopher, and he once said, I have the key to appearing wise, or something like that. He said, think of something stupid to say, and then don't say it. as simple as it is, And
that's great.
He's a fantastic author too. But as simple as that is, really, you have to have constant focus on leadership, constant focus on building that brand reputation as you're talking about. And that means also, putting down the ego and making sure you're not, letting the ego guide all your actions. I could see you coming into those presidents and saying, let me show you how I can help you to fulfill this requirement. And it's not about me. It's about, me, helping the CEO's vision, and then helping you to fulfill his vision. It's not about me. It's I'm the vessel here, so to speak. Right. So that's a great lesson.
Well, and I
Absolutely
think it's
fantastic
important for the audience to understand too, this isn't going to happen in the first conversation.
Right.
I mean, it's, in my later deployments, sitting down with tribal elders and mullahs and these very influential leaders in their communities in Afghanistan or Iraq, you're not going to accomplish anything in the first meeting. Probably not the third meeting, and maybe even by the end of the deployment, you just get a little bit of momentum, and it's just through the consistency. I heard a really wise man say that everybody wants to win on game day, but champions want to win every day.
That's right. That's right.
I think it's the first thing that I ever heard Ben Pappas say.
I appreciate it, brother.
Like consistency is what builds championships, what builds great relationships, what builds outcomes. And so, in the places that I've done that, very rarely does it work in the first conversation. And actually, what I've come to learn is when I feel like it did work in the first conversation, I need to go back and make sure that we were actually talking about the same thing. That
right. Interesting.
It probably wasn't as great as I thought it was. That person was probably just also really charismatic, shared some personality traits, connected on a different level. I don't know that we're 100% on the same page.
Yeah.
So,
That's and let me go back to a little bit of innovation, talk about the innovator's dilemma a little bit. The innovator's dilemma says that success breeds stagnation, that what got you here can't get you there. Powerful stuff. Have you ever found yourself becoming the very system you once sought to disrupt? I think you mentioned a little bit about that.
I don't have a specific example. But, I can see it emerging in a lot of places, and I generally fall into the opposite camp, that I come in and want to disrupt a system when it's not necessarily time yet. Change is a constant, but the rate of change is not. And so you don't always need to be disrupting and innovating. And so finding that place where the system is working, and like you can kind of use an economy of force approach. Like, we're going to spend as little here as we can because the system's working, so that we can take all of those resources and put them somewhere else and focus a mass effort in a specific place.
And does that tie back to what you said, having those true north, those metrics that you measure in, like, at the very beginning of our conversation?
100%.
Okay. So if those are being delivered on, then
right. And so if you're, you see startups in the tech space fail at this all of the time, and it's a pretty well learned lesson now that most founders and entrepreneurs get that, but like, keep your MVP, your minimum viable product, lightweight. Keep it very basic. Like, test the product market fit, and then when you find that, pour all of your resources into that gap that you understand. Get more scale. You don't want to scale up a bunch of features and functionality before you've got great adoption of whatever the core system is. And so you think about, I don't know, pick any one of the big apps out there. Think about how long Amazon spent just being an online bookstore, and then very slowly grew what they were selling before you look at what their business has no boundaries now. But it was very specific. We're going to be successful at whatever this outcome is.
For a long time.
I mean, Uber is still that way, right? Like, they've added Uber Eats and a couple things, but the core, like, product market fit is the same. And so I think that, like, for all of us, like, being very clear about what that, like, there can only be one North Star. Like, that's the point.
Right.
And, like,
that's a great point.
Go in that direction.
Yeah, that is so important for everyone in the audience to understand and to hear. Keep the main thing the main thing. And, I'll say a little quote from Alex Hormozy too. He says, nail it, then scale it. Don't waste your money. And this is more for marketing and, trying to acquire more clients and customers. But until you've proven that you have the product market fit, you're seeing success in it, and you have the right messaging for your marketing, if you're advertising, don't pour all this money into it. And you're wondering, well, why isn't that working? I'm bleeding money. You haven't nailed it yet. Just like Ryan's saying, you haven't, you don't know if you have it right. So keep the main thing, and then be probably cautious about innovation that doesn't need to occur. I want to make sure I'm not saying that right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm hearing.
Right. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
innovation. I mean, it's just breaking down components of innovation and invention are different things. Like innovation is breaking down components, adding something new, reconfiguring it a different way to try to get a new outcome. You know, adding AI to your business now to accelerate a specific outcome, to get better reach, to consolidate meetings, to help update your CRM, whatever that is. That innovation might add clock speed, makes your OODA loop faster, allows you to reach,
Right.
get development cycles faster. Like that's the point. Like make sure that the innovation is still on your North Star, and you're not, adding a bunch of side products. You're not adding new markets. You're not trying to, go after
Right.
customers you're not familiar with. Like those things will take you off the rails.
And I've heard this so much too in franchising. People that I've worked with who've done franchises, like they get destroyed if they franchise too fast,
Right.
either franchise their own business or, usually it's franchising their own business or trying to license it out. And, they can get killed on that when they really just needed, instead of getting a second location, they needed to optimize the first location to make it work better. So interesting, but changing directions a little bit. But as far as advising CEOs and advising leaders, how do you help leaders challenge their own habits and their systems that when you see them that they once worked, but they're now holding them back? How do you do that?
It's a very, we've talked about kind of at a high level, Ben, some of the steps.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time up front trying to help identify or distill what the problem is that they're trying to solve, or what the direction is that we're trying to go. And then really just taking all of the activities that are out there and saying, like, look, what aligns with those things? What are the outcomes we're trying to drive? And just, it's a pretty simple process. Let's get rid of the things that don't exist, or that don't need to exist, on whatever period that is, and either give those funds back to the shareholders, give those funds back to the investors, give them back to lower the prices for the customers, or reinvest them in new systems. And it's just all of those things that we've talked about. And they sound really basic. Those are really hard conversations. It's not a trivial conversation walking in and asking a founder or CEO or a group, like, who is your customer?
Yeah, right. I can imagine.
That's not an easy conversation. And what's funny is people think it's an obvious answer,
But it's not.
you'll get the whole C-suite together to have a conversation. Everybody have a slightly different variation of who the customer is, especially in a service-based business.
Wow.
I spent a lot of time in the payments business. Like, it's really hard to identify who the customer is there. Or if you're selling B2B, like, who's the buyer in this company? Like, who's the person that's really going to make the decision? Like, who's the customer? How does the system work? We did a lot of this kind of stuff when we were thinking about, understanding the networks of our adversaries when we were overseas, like using some of those things, like who has the influence, who's really the decision maker, where does the soft power live? So, like, understanding the people, understanding the market, understanding the trends behind that, and then coming back and updating, like, okay, now that we understand the problem, helping them find, like, what's the North Star metric?
Right.
So,
Okay.
And
do you find that the North Star metric,
what's that?
You find that the North Star metric helps you in these conversations too? Like, so you have to be very delicate, have, Marine Corps leadership trait of tact, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to, speak with integrity and honesty and candor. And again, I'm not a big radical candor guy. There's only candor. I know radical. Right. I've said, you're terrible. You look stupid today. That's radical candor to me, not smart. But, you have to have tact when you're dealing with these powerful people. Nobody wants, in these days, people don't want to say, oh, powerful, they're just a person. Okay, sure. This is a powerful person, so, and they could move and shake your life up if you're not careful, especially if you're in their business. So, the art of you doing that, is significant, and I applaud you for it. But when you're approaching that north metric, like, how do you approach that with enough tact, but also candor? How is the balance there to make sure that they understand?
I'm very fortunate. I've got kind of a second specialty that I've gotten through osmosis. My wife is a therapist and a counselor and a coach. And so I use a lot of those techniques, those, like, active listening techniques. And what I do is I try to remove my own perspective from the answer until they've really chewed on it, and then I'll offer them my perspective. And so just asking questions like, why do you feel that way? Like, why is it this? Like, continuing to ask the why, continuing to ask the kind of the open-ended questions, helping them think through this, because a group of executives, especially a CEO, unless this is their idea, unless the North Star metric is their North Star, they have to be the one that owns this, and they're the ones that are going to drive the company, and nobody can care about it more than they do. And so my perspectives are relevant.
But you have to shape the conditions. This is really valuable, everybody, okay? Because he's teaching you how to lead, teach, influence. We talked about it before with, communication methods and things like that. In my coaching membership, we talk about this stuff too. But, like Eisenhower said, you're getting them to do the things you want them to do because they think it's their idea to do it. That's the true art of leadership. And so the questions you ask to get them to see that this is the North Star. Right. That's some serious stuff right there. That's some serious wizardry.
Right. Well, and it's just continuing to ask, okay, like, so first you have to identify who the customer is and like what's going on in the market, and then ask them, what are the things, like, what are our, it's like I said, I've made a lot of money just corporatizing the Marine Corps planning process and these things.
Perfect.
Now that you understand the environment, you understand who we are, like, what is our competitive advantage in our bid for success to influence our customers, or what do we need to go learn? What do we need to do in order to make that true?
Right.
And just continuing to ask, and eventually they'll have this, generally an aha moment, and come back to like, okay, here's the outcome. And then it's very specifically, okay, what's the leading indicator and what are the lagging indicators going to be?
Right.
What's the operational thing we can measure every day? And then how are we going to know that operational thing is working?
And you have to have enough leading indicators and enough feedback in the present, so the lagging indicators, you don't quit before the lagging indicators catch up. That's you're winning, all of a sudden, the success comes, in money, in value, things like that. But a lot of times it's, the paycheck, the titles, the profits, all those things are lagging indicators. Am I right about that? Okay.
Always. I mean, I tell other vets that are coming up in kind of the corporate world, like, you're going to get paid for the last job you had. Not the job you have today.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
We can ask Brock Purdy about that, right? Like, that's just how this world works. You're not going to be hired at a certain place until people, like, you have a track record of delivering value, and people can point to it and say, I want some of that, right? That's why people get MBAs or whatever. It helps you get certified up that scale. But asking those leading questions and helping people distill those down. And then what becomes probably the most difficult is keep digging and getting concrete and specific, because these North Star metrics have to be real, measurable things. Number of subscribers, churn rate, cost per customer. I mean, that's the leading indicator that you're going to measure. Sales, and then you can break them down to every, like, sales pull through. What's your conversion rate from leads to opportunities through sales? Very specific.
We'll talk about sometimes on here, and especially my coaching membership, we talk about this as well. But in here, we talk about LTV to CAC, like cost of acquisition of clients, lifetime value, like you said, churn rate. Very, very important. And we've got some tech founders too in the audience as well, startups, things like that. So they're going to get a lot out of this and really, really enjoy what you're saying. It's going to be really useful for people. So I appreciate it. Moving on to motivations, desires, and the grit. Do you want the job or just the t-shirt? Put it as a title that way. And in a world obsessed with titles, LinkedIn badges, I have to say, LinkedIn drives me crazy, because people will be like, they show a video of themselves or a picture of them giving a homeless person money and say, oh, someone took this picture of me and I felt obligated that I had to post it and say what a great person I am. It sometimes drives me nuts, just the disingenuous, self-promotion that's going on there. But in this world, obsessed with titles, LinkedIn badges, and image, how do you tell who truly wants to accomplish the mission versus someone that just, is there for the t-shirt, there for the status? And how do you see who really wants it?
God, it's so hard to see it up front. It's really, really tough. There's a gentleman that's worked for me a couple times. He is an unbelievable leader. He's brilliant, solves problems, hilarious, genuine guy. And I've done the same thing to him a couple times. And that is, I won't actually give him a job description. I just tell him what the project is, what the problem is, what the transformation is that we're trying to solve. Because I don't want him to take the job, and I've now expanded this, and it's generally, especially for key leaders on my team, a chief of staff type or somebody that's going to be a COO. Like, I don't want them to take the job. Not that we don't define that as part of the process, but that's always step two. Like, that's after the hiring decision. We'll sit down and say, like, here's the job, and here is the job, and here are your annual goals. Here are your 90-day goals. Here are your 6-month goals. Are the same thing. And in my mind, right? So to answer the question directly, I really just describe what the problem is and see if people get excited about solving the problem and they start thinking through the problem before they understand what their role would be on the team.
Got it. Okay.
And you can see how they're thinking, how they're putting themselves in the chair, and it kind of goes together with how I build teams. And I've had this perspective for a long time now. I don't try to find exceptional people. I try to find passionate people and have them only do the things that they're exceptional at.
Interesting.
And I don't know what those things are. And so what I do is I describe the problems to people. I see if they're passionate about solving the problem, and then I listen to what it is they would do, and then I build a role around those things.
Right. Passionate people who are exceptional at certain things, and you try to find, like, if they're passionate about the problem and employ them, again, Marine Corps leadership principle, employ them, your people, in accordance with their capabilities. Wow. Yeah, that's strong. And I do know for a fact we have people in the audience who will watch the replay or are here right now. I'm not scrolling through the chat, but who are founders and owners and, all these things in tech startups, fintech, different things like that. So, yes, and who are actively building teams. So that's very valuable. Great insight.
Especially early days on a team.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, the serial entrepreneurs out there, you know this better than I do, that everybody's the janitor, everybody's kind of doing whatever it takes to succeed in those early days, right? And so you really have to find people that are passionate about what the problem is, the customers, and I take it all the way back, especially in business, back to the customer. Like, you really have to be able to empathize with the customer and understand what it is you're trying to deliver to add value to their life.
That's a great point too, man. Say that again. Say that one more time, because that's fantastic.
Yeah, you really have to, you really have to understand the customer and what it is you're going to do to solve a problem for them or bring value to their life, and you have to be passionate about that thing. And so,
and sometimes too, and sometimes too, though, you find that even the person that you report to is your customer at the time.
100%.
And so if you're in a job, the person you're assigned to work with, like in Ryan's role when he was going back and forth between the president and the CEO, or the different presidents of different parts of the business, major business, you have to look at them like customers and clients and treat it that way. So these are, again, little tidbits. And again, the goal of the channel and the podcast is to upgrade your life. You can take these things away. You can employ this tomorrow and start making results in your life, in your business, upgrading your reputation tomorrow, maybe today, maybe make a phone call today. So there's no kidding, everybody. There's real stuff here. I hope you're taking notes. You can go back and watch the replay too, but this is, you're getting basically several $1,000, a 5-figure leadership seminar here with a guy who's been there, done that in so many ways. My God, I'm learning things. This is awesome.
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, that was true. It's very true. Shifting gears now too, we all know that when you lead, we have leadership capital. We talk about leadership capital, and that when we lead, you do have to recharge. You have to reset, refit, rearm, resupply, rest, resupply, refit, rearm, all the R's that I'll talk about a lot on here as well. And we talk about in the Marine Corps. These are all Marine Corps things. But there's a cost to leadership. And, what's the unseen cost of real leadership, in your opinion? When have you seen, like, burnout, the sacrifices you have to make to really lead? We talked about hiding your feelings, things like that. So what's the unseen cost of real leadership?
I think for me, you leadership is a strange thing because you don't get feedback very often or in real time. And so for those of you that have stood up and done public speaking, or you've had to deliver a strategy to your executive team, or you've stood up at a Q&A or a town hall, most of the time, even at this point in my career, I still feel somewhat empty. Like I don't know how I did. Like there's a little, I won't, like, I used to feel like this imposter syndrome thing was plaguing me, even in the Marine Corps, after all of those things that you said, Ben, that I would still at the end, like stand up, certainly in the back of my head, and like, what are these people really thinking? Like, what am I actually doing? And so the emotional toll of that, the emotional toll of making these long-term life or death decisions for a company, for a unit, for whatever, that people are depending on you and you don't know.
Right.
Jensen didn't know in 2018, 2019 that this was going to work, right?
Right.
Elon Musk, he might be clairvoyant. He might have known, but
well, I'll say though, you're right about that. They almost failed. SpaceX, they were bankrupt, and Tesla, both going bankrupt until SpaceX last launch worked, because I did a special on him as well. And
so like the leadership side of one, like staying true to your vision, staying clear on your North Star, making all of your resources point towards that, and then like really understanding what the impact is you're having on people. Like you don't get real-time feedback on those things. And so the emotional toll on your body is pretty tough. And I would say, you just have to make sure as you go through that you're a leader at the level that we're talking about. There's no work-life balance. Like maybe over the course of your life, there's work-life balance, but you've got to really focus and pour all of your effort into whatever it is that you're doing. And so make sure that you keep alignment with the rest of your life. You have to stay physically healthy, the basics, eat good food, get good sleep, stay connected to rest and stillness mentally, like those kind of things. Take care of yourself. If you don't do that, you're not going to last very long. You can't give what you don't have. So you have to stay physically and mentally healthy. Keep the most important relationships safe, your family, close friends. But then everything else needs to go towards this because the test is so high. And so I think just understand what you're signing up for. It's funny, I've got a lot of Jensen type quotes and thoughts in my head. Maybe about a year ago, he said, look, if I'd known what I was signing up for, like that
would have done it. That's hilarious. Elon Musk does the same thing. He was trying to be a programmer, a coder at Netscape, and he goes, they wouldn't look at my resume, so I just started to work and build a small team because I wanted to be a part of the internet. It's so funny, but it's interesting as you say these things. It reminds me of when you're in command of a group of people, or you're in charge in business, and you're making these decisions. Like you said, you don't always know what people are thinking. And sometimes you have to hurt feelings, and sometimes your feelings get hurt. Sometimes things happen, and maybe someone above you has to do a hard call on you and your team, and it hurts. And it wasn't personal. It's just they have to do it too. And then they have to bear the burden of thinking maybe that you don't like them, and that you think badly of them, and they don't want that either.
Right.
I mean, some people are sociopaths and don't feel all these things, but it's rare. It's very rare.
Right.
And it is a real toll to lead. And there's the burden of command. We talk about the mask of leadership, the mask of command, all these different things. And so it's almost like in Lord of the Rings when they all go away in that little boat, the people who are bearing the ring, the burden of leadership. They go into the promised lands, whatever the faraway lands. And all my Lord of the Ring kind of super fans will know what I'm talking about there. But it's a similar type feeling. It's like you're just whooped down. You're whooped down. And anytime you have people come back to you later and that, tell you, hey, you made a difference, you did a good job, or this or that, and you want to say, I want to fake it to you guys and be like, yeah, I don't care. I just did what I thought was right. And that's it. And I did. But, you do want to hear that it made a difference and it was useful. And even if you got your ass kicked along the way. So for all of you out there that are growing in leadership, and we've talked about it. What's the point of being a leader? Well, I'll tell you, you make more money as a leader. You have more options. You have more respect. You have more agency in your life, more opportunities. Be a leader in your field. You don't have to be a leader like Ryan or a leader like me. Be a leader in your field, and you're just going to have more opportunity. But, however, and all three, whichever one we're going to go for, there is a price to pay. And there's no success without sacrifice. So I think, Ryan, you said that very, very well. And so, we're coming to the close here. Covered so much, and I really appreciate everything you've, had to say, the lessons and the bits, the huge amounts of wisdom actually you've passed on to all of us through such an accomplished career and accomplished life and what you've done. And you're only going to do so much more in the future. Everybody be looking out for Ryan. Follow him on LinkedIn. And I don't think you're on any other social media, but LinkedIn, you're there. And you guys can watch his star continues to rise, and he will do great things as always. And we're all lucky here to get this wisdom passed to us. But passing the torch a little bit now too, Ryan. So on the show, we're starting this tradition of, you are going to get to make up a question for the next guest, and you don't know who they are. So if you could ask the next leader who sits in this chair a question that would help all of us understand more about success, mindset, leadership, innovation, or transformation on a deeper level, what question would you ask them? And then I'll tee that up for a question for them.
Yeah, what a great way to end. And I've been pondering this one ever since you sent it to me. It's a tough one. And I think it goes back to what we were just talking about, and the same questions that you asked me. And it is the question: do you want the job or just a T-shirt? But ask a slightly different way, and that is like, how did you choose your suffering? Like, how did you choose? Ooh. How did you choose what it is that there was no suffering and you could deal with the pain?
Whoa, that's very deep, and I'm sure they're going to have to wrap their heads around it. And I look forward to seeing the answer. But another powerful question. So thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate you sharing that, and they will get that in the next session. Thanks so much for being here. Real pleasure. Appreciate your time. We went for about an hour and a half, and I'm going to have this uploaded very soon. It's live right now, but we'll have it uploaded and chapters will be all set. So thank you for being here, Ryan. Do you have any saved rounds? Any last things you want to say?
Just thanks to you. Your influence over the years was certainly a pretty massive part of any success I've had. And I really appreciate the time today. Great conversation. What a great way to spend a Marine Corps birthday.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate you saying that, brother. It means a lot, man, especially coming from you. And what a great way to spend the Marine Corps birthday, right? They say Marines can get together on Marine Corps birthday. Here we are. We just needed some cake, and it would have been perfect. So, hey, Semper Fi, man. Happy Marine Corps birthday, and I'll be in touch very soon. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate you guys being here. Go ahead and like, subscribe, comment, all those things. Put any comments you have in the upload for Ryan. If you have any questions for him, follow on, and he can check it out as well too, and see if you guys have any follow-on questions for him. But thanks so much for being here, spending your Monday with us. Like I always say, make yourselves better, make the world better. Have an amazing, amazing week. Happy Marine Corps birthday, 250th birthday, and tomorrow, happy Veterans Day. And go ahead and thank a veteran tomorrow for their service and just recognize them. And like I always say, go get yours. I'll see you all next time. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. All right, Ryan, I'll talk to you soon.
See you later, Ben. Thanks.
Bye.